Hello everyone, this is Mike Martin again, and I was going through the lesson looking at the assignment, and there's not a whole lot really to be done. I mean, going through the lesson, there's quite a bit to learn, and you should be playing around with that, but adding content and designing a page with one particular product, yeah, I think it's probably going to be fairly easy. What's going to be foreign or maybe a little bit more difficult may be making the styles change with JavaScript. And you have good examples right there in the lesson. So if you're two-thirds of the way through your project and you're almost done and you've got that working or you got a good handle on what you want it to do, then you can pretty much ignore this video. So don't waste any more time here. If you're almost done and you've got things working the way they should, that's fine. But I wanted to provide an alternative for those of you who are just contemplating this, and that is you can do a lot of these things that you're being asked to do with JavaScript through CSS3, but animations, and they actually cover animations in the lesson and talk about them there. So you saw if you saw the video that I posted on the lesson, then you saw some of the animations that I did there and added to the homepage. So my homepage now has a full set of content, and I was going to get that out and just this is it. This is it's got all the menu items here and a header that's nice. And then we've got a three-column layout with an image and some extra content that I added some animation to, and that's kind of cool. So my homepage is done. I have links to all of my things, which is one of the requirements. So in week 4, if I wanted to go to week 4.2, then I would just click here and it would take me there. And so I've got this all set up for the structure that we've already created. But one of the things that I did was change the style a little bit on, because one of the requirements is change the style on the um, product page via a button. Okay, so what I did was I added a couple of buttons here. This is the old style. This would be like what you see on my homepage. This is the original style that I set out to create. And I thought, well, there's nothing wrong with this. Why would I want to change it? But that's one of the requirements. So I put a button on here to change it to a new style. And so when I click new style, it loads a new style sheet. And that's an option that, maybe you haven't considered, is instead of just rewriting several of your styles, kind of a tedious process, you can actually just go and create a new style sheet and have it load it when you click the button. So there's a significant difference here. The old style, we have the sunset picture with no boats. It's kind of a brownish header and footer. And then the new style, I changed the image, changed the backdrop opacity here, and good or bad, I did, there's a significant amount of change here. So this is what I did, and I'm going to show you just briefly how I did it so that you can explore that idea. One of the things that I did on the home page, as you're going through your homework, it says create all of this content with images and use a variety of HTML tags to get a full page of content for your home page. And then the next step is change some of the values with JavaScript. No buttons, just write a JavaScript function that does something. And so I thought, what a perfect time to do that would be on page load. And one of the perfect things that you can do is you can make an attractor that says, hey, pay attention to this part of the page because we want you to do something here. This is my call to action. And so I created a pulse animation, and they're using the keyframes called back change. I'm changing the background color and opacity, and then I'm going to call that using my pulse class. Now this class is set up to do nothing but control the animation, but I'm going to use the class list add to add this to the header up there and let this thing pulse when it loads, and I'll show you where it loads. So this is the home page, and Excuse me while I scroll around here. Here we go. I used an event down here in the script. It says window.onload equals function, and it says go get this element by its ID, and I just gave the backdrop an ID of backdrop, created a variable for it, so now it's contained in the variable, and then I just say bd classlist.add pulse. And so what that does is when the page loads, it adds that class pulse to its class list, which, as you know, you can have more than one class assigned to any given thing. And so scrolling back up again, this is my drop down list at the top, and right here is my backdrop. And I just created a class container backdrop and styled those in my style sheet, which is homework.css. And then I created this pulse, and what I'm doing is container, backdrop are the two classes that are associated with, so that's the class list. So when this thing loads, it just adds pulse into the class list, just like that. And it creates a pulse. And I'll show you what that looks like. Go back to our browser and load the home page. Now when I hit the refresh button, you can watch this little background pulse. It's going to do that 3 times. Kind of an attention getting thing, and turned out really well. So that is one way that you can satisfy the requirement to modify the home page with JavaScript. And I did it by creating an animation in CSS and calling that animation into being by adding it as a class to the class list for a particular part of my page. So explore that idea if you want. If not, do your own thing. This is just one way to satisfy that curiosity. Now, on the other part, when you're talking about your 4.1 or 4-1 assignment where you're creating a product page, where you have a one page that's dedicated to one type of product, you're going to have all kinds of details and things like that. Going back to the browser over here, this is my 4.1, 4-1. It's got the same menu bar up here. If you go to the old style, it looks just exactly the same as the others. It's got the same links because I used a template. I created that template and I used the template and I just changed the main content. And then I satisfied the requirement by adding this new style button to let it load. But to satisfy the content requirements, I just did a bootstrap card deal, added some images that I found on Google, and used these cards. And then in this particular case, to add more detail, I added a modal, which is part of Bootstrap. And you can read about how to do that if you're using Bootstrap. You can use a modal like this. This adds more details for each type of seat. So I've got a close button that closes it, and then I can learn more about each seat, give it a price, describe it in the details, close that and go to the next one. And then all of these things are modals that are called into action, which means that I can't scroll to the back of the page as I'm using my mouse here. Until I close this, I can close it here, I can close it here, or I can just click away from it and it will close. So that's using a modal. It's a way to save space and add more detail without leaving the page. It would be kind of difficult to continue the columns on down here. It could be done, but if you wanted to use columns below this, I would just create a second div down below, the cards, and then create a column for each one and make sure that it doesn't exceed the length or whatever. So that's one way to create this singular content page, boat seats or whatever your product is. And then I satisfied that JavaScript change style requirement by adding a button and having it swap classes. Okay, so how do you do that? Let's take a look and see what I did. Very briefly, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because this is something that I found on Stack Overflow. Sorry, I have trouble thinking of that name every once in a while. But on Stack Overflow, someone asked the same question. Hey, I want to change the style sheet based on what somebody clicks. And so this is what they recommended. and they call their function change CSS, and they pass into it the file and the link index. So what are you talking about? File and link index. Well, I decided to take a look up here and see how many links I have, because they're calling the file by its tag name. Link, link, link. So the link that I actually want to change is the third one down, because the first link is for my favicon. The second link is for the style sheet that controls Bootstrap. Then the third link down is the style sheet that I built for this class. And so that's my homework.css file linked right here. So these things are going to go by an index. Well, you've got an array. What does an array start with? 0. So I've got 0, 1, 2. So which file am I going to pass in? When I call this function, I want to pass in the index of the file that I want to change. And that would be 2, correct. So when I call this, let me find that button. Right. This says on click change CSS. There's my function call. CSS, and I just named the new style sheet change.css. How do you do that? Take your homework.css file, open it up, say save as a new file name or save as, give it a new file name, and then change the values in it. That's exactly what I did. So I changed the background color on the dark background to a little bit darker, and I think sometimes prettier shade of brown. And changed a few things here, just changed a few values to make it look a little bit different. You can experiment with what to change. And then that's the file that I'm calling in here. So if I've got a new style button and an old style button, so when I ask it to change, it's the same index because it's still the third one down. But then when it says give me the old style, I just reload homework. And you can actually watch this happen in the inspector if you want to follow me over here. I'm going to open the inspector, and I'm going to go to the head of the document, and you can see that right now, right here in this link relative style sheet type CSS href equals change, that's because we're using the new style. When I click old style, you can see that it changed to homework.css. And that's what my JavaScript is doing, is it's indexing these by the array that it sees it in, and when I click new style, it changes it to change.css. And so it's really easy to do. That's one way to satisfy the requirement to have a button click, change the styles. But like I said, there's a dozen ways to do this, and you could just change a few things that are obvious on a button click, or you could do something like I did and build a new style sheet and load it in and have it reflect new changes in your page. So just a brief way to satisfy this. If you're 2/3 of the way through your project and already got a handle on it, don't worry about it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions about this, obviously hit me up on email, and I'll be happy to help you or answer any questions that you have. And I hope everybody gets this assignment done on time. I haven't had any questions from anybody yet, so I assume that everything's going smoothly. However, if it's not, don't hesitate to ask, and I'll see you in the next video.